In the quest to find life beyond Earth, scientists have long relied on the concept of the habitable zone, a region around a star where conditions might be just right for liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. It's a simple idea with enormous implications. If a planet lies within this zone, the chances increase that it could support life as we know it. But as our exploration of exoplanets deepens, we're beginning to realize that this definition of habitability might be far too narrow. New research suggests that the presence of vegetation could play a crucial role in determining whether a planet is truly habitable, potentially expanding the boundaries of these zones and reshaping our understanding of where life might thrive in the universe. Let's start by considering how we currently define habitability. The habitable zone, also known as the Goldilocks zone, refers to the distance from a star where a planet could have the right temperature to maintain liquid water on its surface. It's a broad and somewhat crude measure, but it's a useful starting point. Earth is, of course, our primary example of a habitable planet, sitting comfortably within the sun's habitable zone. Yet even on Earth, the conditions that make life possible are far more complex than mere proximity to a star. Factors such as atmospheric composition, magnetic fields, geological activity, and, as new studies show, the presence of vegetation, all play critical roles. Every object in a solar system has what's known as an albedo, a measure of how much sunlight it reflects back into space. This reflective property can significantly affect a planet's climate. For instance, in our solar system, Saturn's moon Enceladus has a remarkably high albedo, reflecting about 99% of the sunlight that hits it. This is due to its icy surface, which sends nearly all the solar energy back into space, leaving little to warm the moon itself. On the other hand, darker surfaces absorb more heat. Earth, with its diverse surface features, has an average albedo of about 0.30, meaning it reflects 30% of the sunlight and absorbs the rest. This balance between reflection and absorption is vital in maintaining Earth's climate. But what happens when we consider other planets, especially those beyond our solar system? Could the presence of vegetation on an exoplanet influence its albedo and, by extension, its climate and habitability? This question led a team of Italian researchers to explore the impact of vegetation on the habitability of Earth-like exoplanets. Their findings, soon to be published in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, could fundamentally alter how we search for life in the cosmos. The lead author of the study, Erika Bassisi, and her colleagues at the Italian National Institute for Astrophysics Trieste Astronomical Observatory took a closer look at how vegetation could modify a planet's albedo through what's known as the Charney mechanism. Named after Jules Charney, a pioneer in modern meteorology, this mechanism describes a feedback loop between vegetation cover and rainfall. Essentially, plants tend to darken a planet's surface compared to barren land. This darker surface absorbs more sunlight, leading to a warmer climate. On an exoplanet with vegetation, this effect could mean the difference between a frozen, inhospitable world and one where life might flourish. To test their hypothesis, the researchers updated an Earth-like surface temperature model, incorporating different types of vegetation, specifically grasslands and forests. These plant types were chosen for their contrasting albedo properties. Grasslands, which are lighter in color, have a higher albedo and therefore reflect more sunlight, while forests, being darker, have a lower albedo and absorb more heat. The model considered the dynamic competition between these vegetation types and how they might influence the overall climate of an exoplanet. One of the most intriguing findings from this study is that the presence of vegetation could extend the habitable zone of a planet. The researchers discovered that on a world covered in vegetation, the surface temperature could be higher than on a barren planet at the same distance from its star. This warming effect, driven by the albedo changes caused by plant life, means that planets previously thought to be too cold for life might actually be warm enough to support it, provided they have the right kind of vegetation. But the impact of vegetation on habitability doesn't stop there. The study explored 4 different scenarios: complete tree dominance, a forest world; complete grass dominance, a grassland world; a mix of both; and a bidirectional world where vegetation patterns shift depending on initial conditions and external factors. In each case, the type and distribution of vegetation played a crucial role in determining the planet's climate. For instance, in a forest-dominated world, the lower albedo of trees led to a warmer planet, pushing the outer edge of the habitable zone further out. Conversely, in a grass-dominated world, the higher albedo of grasslands resulted in a cooler climate. What makes this research particularly exciting is the notion that vegetation's effect on a planet's climate is not static. It evolves based on the dynamic interactions between different plant species, their competition for resources, and the planet's overall climate system. This means that habitability is not a fixed property, but one that can change over time as vegetation cover shifts and evolves. This dynamic aspect of habitability could lead to some fascinating possibilities in the search for life. For example, a planet that was once thought to be uninhabitable due to its position in the habitable zone might become more favorable for life as vegetation spreads and alters its climate. The researchers also introduced the concept of a pseudo-Earth in their study, a hypothetical planet with a constant fraction of oceans across all latitudes, which affects how continents and vegetated surfaces are distributed relative to the equator, where most of the sun's energy is concentrated. They also considered a dry version of this pseudo-Earth, where ocean cover is limited to 30%, compared to Earth's 70% ocean cover. These models allowed the team to explore how varying amounts of land and water could influence the climate-vegetation feedback loop and ultimately habitability. Their simulations revealed that the more land a planet has, the stronger the warming effect from vegetation. On a dry pseudo-Earth, where land is more prevalent, vegetation's impact on albedo and climate is even more pronounced. However, the researchers caution that the ocean fraction cannot be too small, as this could disrupt the planet's hydrological cycle, which is crucial for maintaining stable climates and supporting life. While the overall effect of vegetation on a planet's albedo and climate might be small, it is not insignificant. In fact, it could be a critical factor in determining whether a planet is capable of supporting life. The study highlights how vegetation can act as a buffer against external factors such as stellar luminosity and orbital variations, which can influence a planet's climate. For instance, on a planet where grasslands and forests coexist, the distribution of these vegetation types across different latitudes could help stabilize the climate, making the planet more resilient to changes in its environment. The researchers are clear that their work is only a first step in understanding the complex interactions between vegetation and habitability on exoplanets. Their model included only certain types of grasslands and forests, and did not take into account factors such as water availability and atmospheric CO2 concentrations, which can also significantly affect a planet's climate and habitability. Future research will need to incorporate these additional variables to provide a more comprehensive picture of how vegetation might influence habitability on other worlds. Moreover, the study opens the door to exploring other types of vegetation that might exist on exoplanets. Earth plants have evolved over millions of years to thrive in specific environments. But what about plant life on other planets? Could there be vegetation that is even more efficient at absorbing sunlight, or that has adapted to different atmospheric compositions? These are questions that future research will need to address as we continue to expand our understanding of life in the universe. One of the most exciting implications of this research is how it might influence the search for life beyond our solar system. Traditionally, the search for habitable exoplanets has focused on finding worlds within the habitable zone of their stars, with the assumption that liquid water is the key ingredient for life. But if vegetation can extend the boundaries of this zone, it means that we might need to broaden our search to include planets that were previously considered too cold to support life. This could significantly increase the number of potentially habitable planets and, by extension, the chances of finding life beyond Earth. In addition to expanding the habitable zone, the presence of vegetation on an exoplanet could also serve as a potential biosignature, a sign that life exists or once existed on that planet. As we develop more advanced telescopes and techniques for studying distant worlds, detecting the presence of vegetation could become an important tool in our search for extraterrestrial life. For instance, future space missions might focus on analyzing the light reflected from exoplanets to detect the characteristic spectral signatures of vegetation, such as the red edge, a sharp increase in reflectance in the near-infrared spectrum that is associated with chlorophyll in plants. This research also has implications for understanding the long-term stability of habitable conditions on Earth. By studying how vegetation influences climate on other planets, We can gain insights into the role that plant life has played in maintaining Earth's habitability over billions of years. This in turn could help us better understand the potential impacts of current and future changes in vegetation, cover due to human activity, such as deforestation and climate change. In conclusion, the idea that vegetation could extend the habitable zone of exoplanets represents a significant shift in how we think about habitability. It suggests that life might not be limited to the narrow range of conditions we currently consider ideal, but could instead thrive in a variety